What's going on, friends? We're in the echo chamber. We're in the dark room. I'm kind of a little busy today. We got another new cat, right? It's actually, funny enough, it's their father. We have sister and brother. We have their mother, now we have their father. So I have to kind of keep an eye on them. You know how cats are, right? It's a whole fucking deal. So we got to make them all chill with each other because they're all being scared. So I've been trying to keep an eye on them all day. But I wanted to kind of talk about something that I thought was very, very interesting in connection to my life. So as it's been said a bunch by me, a lot of late I've been really diving into mythology as much as I can. It was so absent throughout my whole life. I never really, I didn't grow up alongside mythology, right? It was something kind of separate and something in the past to me. I didn't really know the merit of it all. So, saying that, it's been very difficult to go on this journey for myself. Just because I don't know where to go. I don't know, is there a certain route that I should take? You know, mythology exists throughout many cultures, and me being like an American, and I look at my past, it's like Scandinavian, Irish, Welsh, Scottish, English, mostly that, right? So Anglo-Saxon, Celtic, Scandinavian, I don't know, Viking kind of shit. It's like there's all that stuff, so it's all mixed, and those are totally different people, right? You could branch them all together and call them white, but they're not. They're all so fucking different from each other. And I just have all of that in me. So in my mind I thought, I kind of want to stay in my own heritage, if you will. It's so fucking scattered, you know. It's almost blasphemous because I could claim German just as much as I could claim Celtic. You know, it kind of sucks that way. I'm not a big fan of mixing, I guess. But I do what I got to do. And so trying to unravel my own mythology of the book is the route that I've taken. And along the way, I would just kind of borrow from things that I really liked or just meant something to me. And actually, of late, I came to a weird realization. Let me show you. So obviously before I was talking about Celtic mythology and stuff, Tuatha Dé Danann, the Milesians, Partholon, and all that stuff. Arthur, the legends. I have this old book here. This is the Grimm Fairy Tales. Interestingly enough, the picture on the front is the story I want to talk about real quick. But the story is called King of the Golden Mountain. And to kind of put it really short, there was this merchant guy who lost some money. He wanted it back. He was approached by what was described in here as a black mannequin. And it's a little tiny creature as such. And the creature's like, I can give you all this gold if you give me whatever the first thing that wraps itself around your leg. And then I can have it in 12 years from now. And the guy's like, well, this is kind of dumb. Okay, but what if it's something stupid? It's worth all my while, huh? And so he comes home and his son wraps himself around his leg. He's like, fuck. 12 years goes by. He's got to give his son to this little being. So basically, the son would have been the mannequins, but they decided that the son no longer belonged to his father because he's an adult. So he should get into the boat and follow the stream, and his father should himself push it off. So the dad will give up the kid. So the mannequin won't get the kid, as if I'm understanding correctly. And the father won't either. So it's like, oh, well, that sucks. And the kid goes off. And all of a sudden, in the distance from this river, you can kind of see a little bit of Celticness in here, even though it's dramatic. He finds this beautiful castle. And when he goes inside of it, there's a maiden. And she was very enchanting. And she asks if he's her preserver. Eventually, he had to do this thing where tonight 12 black men hung with chains will appear. Don't speak a word because they'll torment you. And then the next night, 12 more, and then they'll try to cut your head off and all this crazy fucking shit. A lot of things happen in the story. Suffice to say, he passed the trial for this maiden. And then they end up getting married. And then eventually they have a child. And then when 8 years passed, the king's heart grew tender of his father, and he wanted to go back to his dad. But she did not want him to go. She said, I know it will be to my misfortune. On this departure, she gave him a wishing ring and said, take this ring and put it on your finger, and you will at once be at the place where you wish to be. Only you must promise never to use it to wish me away from here and to be with your father. You can't do that. So he goes back to his dad. He tries to prove to him he's this king of this place. Dad's like, I don't get it. And so he wished his wife away, right? Because that's what we always do in these mythologies. They end up doing the one thing that these otherworldly beings say not to do. And eventually, after proving him he's the son and accidentally wishing his wife there, he makes a curse happen. And he has to go back to find her again. He's got to go through this little trial. And we're not going to get necessarily into the trial, but it does say there's giants and there's an inheritance to them. And he ended up taking all their inheritance from them to use to fight something once he goes back to his wife. So he approaches his wife. They're celebrating a new marriage. She hooked up with some other man. Once he got to the castle, he ate all her food, and then he took her away. Long story short, he became the king again, because there's like, he had a sword that, you know, with this sword I cut everyone's head off but my own, or some shit, and he cuts everyone's heads off. I'm not here to tell you the story, but it reminded me of a couple things. When I read mythologies, whether so far Celtic, Germanic, Scandinavian-ish, I haven't really gone into that one, because I'm not a huge fan of Scandinavian stuff. It follows the same logic, where you are this person living in this world, and then you have to go off to another world. You're either sent there for some reason, as a curse, or you have to go somewhere. And then when you go there, you end up hooking up with some woman, or befriending somebody inside of that realm. And they tell you that you can't leave this realm, or they say, well, okay, you can, but you can't make mention of this place, or basically you made a pact inside of here and you don't break the pact. The pact exists inside of the other realm, not in the mortal realm. And the person in the story always breaks the pact. They either, like I said, he made mention that he has a wife and child, and he brought them out of that place. There's some other stories where they follow the same pattern. And I thought, why are mythologies speaking of this? And then I thought about my own life, and I dwelled on one idea. I said, you know, as I began the process of writing this book, I wouldn't necessarily say that I made a pact, but I feel like I allowed some entity to help guide me to create this process. And I'm born into this place and I'm living inside of it. But remember my last video, a little bit of self-therapy, I said, you know, sometimes I wonder about leaving this place. And I wonder if that's the echo of this, where I made this promise to this being inside of here, and I'm creating this mythology. And the mythology is the existence of the mind of God, which is the existence of my own thoughts, which is inside of my head. And there's a transcendent process that leads through memory to the memory of God. And I'm doing that. But I'm working with otherworldly beings, so I have to kind of be in this world. And saying that, I've kind of abandoned and neglected my friends and family and stuff because I'm so into this. And there's a part of me that wants to come out of it. And just for a vacation, honestly. But then there's another part of me that's like, what if I just stop doing this altogether? And so I think about these mythologies. The one thing the mortal always does wrong is he goes against the wishes of the otherworldly beings. You think of the Fae folk. When you make a promise with them, you cannot break it. If you break it, it dooms you. So I think about that in my life and I say, like, man, I feel like I'm in this world, I'm working with these weird other beings, even though they're imaginary beings that exist in my head that I gave name to and are characters in my book. Nonetheless, they are beings from another realm. That other realm is where my mind can reach to, that my physical body cannot. I call that place the imagination, right? Plain and simple, just to keep it simple. It's the imaginary. I'm sitting down wanting to make my own book. I have to make things up to put in here. They're influenced by the world around me, but generally I made a character's name called Quinlan, Quirtus, Nacum, Elastra, Eris, Cyprus. Like, these aren't, you can't just go around like, oh yeah, Cyprus is this guy. Like, no, I made it up. The archetypes might exist in our real world, and I put in there as like a kind of a conduit or like a sleeve or some sort of vessel for this made up being to inhabit, but it falls into line with the idea of opening the imaginary. And now I'm working with these beings. I'm creating a story. I'm helping them. They're helping me, right? That's a very ethereal way of saying I'm writing a book of a fictitious story. But I've made promises. That's what the promise is. Remember I told you about the whisper, the promise? Well, that's that. And so we venture through into this world to explore it. But sometimes me, the mortal that exists in this fucking world, that has to go to his job every 5 days a week and has to have all these commitments and pay these stupid bills and shit, well, he doesn't get to go in this world, that part of me. He has to sit in this room and try to find this fucking world. And I feel this division. And that's possibly why I was always connected, Germanic and Celtic as well. We'll call it Indo-European, even though that's kind of vague and incorrect to use, but I'm just trying to invoke all European people. This otherworldly encounter. And I look at the mythologies and I look at the mistakes the mortals make are always the ones that these beings say, that's the one thing you can't do. I think of that in my life. And I think of how very, very difficult this journey has been. I'm making a new episode of the Forgotten podcast series. This one's going to be centered around the keepers of faith. And we'll go into what all that means. And it's very long and it's a lot. I just made one about the forgotten people. Eventually I'll talk about the forgotten king. I'll make mention more of the whisper, the Anaku, all these different things that are gathered from without and brought within, placed inside of this place, and from that point to create a story. The purpose of that story is to understand self, to explore self, but to also give a guiding compass and the map to another so that they may find it in themselves. The idea of mythology is a story to help another. But what if I don't want to do it anymore? What if I'm fed up? What if I just don't want to go on the journey anymore and I just want to sit down and relax? The biggest communication, if you even want to indeed call it that, has always been that voice that I told you about. The one that told me, you are the conduit. The one that said to me, I am the thing that this passes through. Taking from the real world and the real life experience and people and consciousness and everything that mankind understands, that I get to understand through the friends that I have around me, and sifting it into this world through my own mind, which is the vessel that allows transcendence into the imaginary. That is indeed the role. Through that, I can pull back fucking shit that exists up there and bring it down here. It's like a current that can pass through. Into the unknown, right? What were the things that hit me along the way? And what brings fear to me are the warnings of dealing with the Fae people. The fallen ones. The good folk, I've heard them described as deities that have kind of slowly become little Fae people. For one reason or another. Kind of like lack of worship and stuff like that. What ties me into all this are the synchronicities of life, of me working on this book and other people helping me and the shit they tell me, and I'm like, you're saying things that actually are this, and and they don't even say it. Like, we're all tapping into this and putting inside of this place. Here I am, sitting in front of a fucking camera. on a website called YouTube where people are watching. That is fucking bizarre. It is so weird. It's not ever been, I never imagined this would be my life. Even a year ago, I didn't think this was going to be my life. The reason I brought up this story here, this specific one, is I feel this happening in my life. That I've made this endeavor to enter this other realm. To find self, I went to another. And inside of that realm, am I searching for me? Much in the same way the Forgotten King will do subsequently to the series. The woman, because sometimes the hero or the guy going into the realm will be given a wife that exists there. He'll be given this woman that he kind of only has here, but not in the other worlds. And I told you that the conveyor was a female voice. I feel like, if I were to get very mythological, that with this female conveyor, am I creating this story of this world, birthing it into something. I don't know, I'm not going to say in existence, like, and then it popped up in this gamma galaxy 10 million light years away, or, you know, I'm not like that. I don't know how to explain it, but existing here, like, you have to understand, when you make a place in your mind, it becomes a place, whether it's just yours in your schizophrenic imagination, or like Tolkien, he just made that shit up, and now everyone kind of believes in this, not believes, but enjoys being in Middle Earth, right? Well, that's a fucking place. This works the same. I just kind of believe with this female, I'm kind of birthing something. Because you have to think with mythologies. Isn't it interesting how our universe is created? You think about Kronos, you think about Sky Father and the Earth Mother. Do you know what I mean? Sky Father comes from this ethereal place. The Earth Mother is the force of it. Well, in my book, it's the Saria, it's Gaia. She exists, the planet. Here I am, the Sky Father, coming in, planting the seeds to create this place. A long story short, as I read this little, just a small, it was like 5 pages maybe, just a small little mythology, was I reminded that maybe I am truly doing the mythology that I set about doing. And maybe we are on the right path. There's just a little bit of trepidation on my part of, gee, I really hope this isn't bad. You know? I do get a little nervous wondering if this is the right thing. I don't know. But just something to think about. Just something to kind of ponder about. What we do in the dark always comes to light, right? We'll see what that really means when it comes to our own personal story.